Hello, and welcome to the No Password Required podcast. We're here at the Threat Locker podcast studio at Cyber Florida's Sunshine CyberCon. I'm your host, Jack Clabby. I'm a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields. And with me is...
I'm Kayley Melton. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Cognitive Security Institute, and as always, the Bob Ross of InfoSec.
So Kayley, it's great to see you in person. We typically record this remotely.
Yes.
So it's nice to be in the same room. I'm used to looking at you, so I'm going to try to look out, but this is fun to record this way. Our guest today, who we have met, is Kathy Collins. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you.
Kathy is a security consultant at Secure Ideas. Kathy, welcome to the No Password Required podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We caught your talk earlier today. It was just really awesome.
Yes, thank you.
So we're so glad that you were able to come join us for this sort of chat here. Your story is a really cool one, and I know to some degree what you do to us is extremely cool, but you've also done other cool things in the past. So now you are a pen tester, which is one of the coolest jobs in this cybersecurity world, right? It's what a lot of the students want to do when they graduate from these programs. But you've had some other stuff too. So you had an IT role, and then you left that to go into the culinary world. Can you talk a little bit about your first role in IT, and then what led you to go into the culinary community, and then how you ended up making the pivot to where you are now?
My first role was on the help desk at a company that some of you may have heard of called AOL.
Yeah.
I think it's still around. People used to, but it was help desk. So I was resetting passwords and telling people why their connection was bad, which, was not our fault, of course.
Yeah.
But it wasn't very fulfilling. It wasn't all that interesting. And I really hated being tied to that phone all day.
Okay.
So, I did that for a little bit, and then I got an opportunity to work in a restaurant because I was actually waiting tables part-time.
Okay.
I bartended, I waited tables and stuff. And so I'd always wanted to be in the kitchen, but I hadn't had the opportunity to. And one day I was waiting tables and the chef walked out during Sunday brunch.
Oh, like walked out not to come back.
Right.
Like walked out.
He was not returning.
Whoa.
So the owner was there and he turned to me and he said, "Can you make eggs?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can make eggs, So I hopped back there and I helped him, and he was like, "Do you want to just move into the kitchen?" I was like, "Yes." Because I waited tables from the time I was like 16. And at this point I was 27, 28. And I had expressed interest in the kitchen in Chicago where I grew up, but they said, it was a man's world. Then they were like, "You're going to cry. It's too hot in here."
My God.
And I was basically laughed out of it, so that sucked. But, I didn't have any other way to go into it. And this just kind of happened, and I threw myself into it. And about 6 months later, I went back to Chicago. This was in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
About 6 months later, I went back to Chicago, and I enrolled in the Culinary Institute of America.
Oh, wow.
And got my degree there.
Right. And then at some point, though, you make another pivot. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So about 20 years of cooking.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then during COVID, when they sent everybody to work from home, I was working for an energy company in Jacksonville, and I had a corporate chef job that I'd been on for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So I cooked for the CEO, for the staff. It was maybe 40, 50 people. And sometimes I'd do things in the warehouses that they had for those employees. But it was, for the most part, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I did things for the CEO on the weekends and some evenings, cooking for events and stuff. But I had just gone through a divorce, and I have a daughter who was 6 or 7 at the time. And she, going back to another restaurant that I have to work nights and weekends, long story short, when COVID hit, they sent everybody home and I lost my job. So trying to figure out what I was doing or what I was going to do, I kicked around this, should I start a food truck and be my own boss and, all these things. But then during COVID, I watched my friends who had restaurants just kind of spiral and swirl the drain. And it was really rough for everybody. And then the thought of having to go back nights and weekends and be married to a restaurant in order to make it successful, I had to do some soul searching. And, while I was doing this, I found myself on my computer a lot and in front of the TV a lot. And you see all these cyber attacks and, all this stuff going on, people working from home and the insecurities there. And I was on my computer all the time looking at stuff, doing things. And I came across boot camp. through Full Stack. And I looked into it for a few months and finally decided that I wanted to do it. I was like, I've always loved computers. I was in IT before. This sounds like way more fulfilling, and better quality of life. Like all the things just kind of lined up. So I did that for 6 months, went through that boot camp. And shortly after, I was offered the job at Secure Ideas. It happened really quickly. They said, it's going to be months before you get a job and all that. But I was able to leverage the skills that I had learned in the restaurant and managing people and, all the business acumen and everything. So those skills that you don't think are transferable, they are.
That's great to hear. Yeah. People and people problems are similar across the board. Just
exactly.
That's really.
Did you have a particular role in mind when you were going through those classes, or were you just kind of like, whatever happens, happens?
I was fully prepared to take a blue team role just because everybody wanted to be the pen tester, new red team. That's like the sexy thing that everybody likes, right? That all the students want to do.
Yeah, that's why everyone's asking questions. Yeah.
So I was like, that would be so cool, but like, I'm not going to get my hopes up because they were like 90% of the jobs are blue team, So I threw myself into that. But then, when this position came up in Jacksonville, I threw my hat in the ring and it just, the timing worked out. And, I interviewed with Kevin and Jason and they're awesome and great. And it's been almost 4 years now.
So you had been in Jacksonville and you got to stay in Jacksonville? Or had you gone to Chicago and you came back to
No, I went to Chicago when I went to school. This was 20 years ago, 24 something at this point. But I grew up in Chicago. Okay. And then I moved here with an ex and we promptly broke up. So you know how that goes. So I decided to stay. Okay. I didn't have to. Yeah. So I stayed for a while. I went back to Chicago to go to school and then ended up coming back to Jacksonville.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and that's great. That's great. That's a Florida-based. Or at least you can work at it from Florida, which is really cool.
Yeah. And the home office is in Jacksonville. We do have remote people all over the country. And I work from home a lot. Like I don't have to go into the office. When I first started for the first year, I was in the office every day, just because, especially starting out in this field, you want to be around people and have questions and stuff. And, working just remotely, just starting out wasn't even appealing to me at that point. Yeah. But now it's nice not to have to sit in traffic. Yeah.
Kathy, we know now one of your roles now is I would say get to do, which is betraying my thinking it's cool, right? But you do physical penetration testing. Yep. And there must have been a first time that you did that. How did you get ready for that first time that you're going to go do this?
I got ready like I was, a spy or something. We did all this OSINT, which you do normally anyway, but I was like, you're really into it. I think I had a spreadsheet and all this stuff. And then when we went to the first day when we went to go out there, my partner picked me up and he said, "Are you wearing all black?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "It's daytime."
That's awesome.
I was like, "Well, I don't know what we're going to do."
Tactical vest.
And I like black stretchy pants too. I was like, what if I have to and I did have to climb up on the roof. So
okay.
He wouldn't go. He went up the ladder a little bit and he was like, I said, I'll go. I got my stretchy pants on.
That really was what it was. You got up on a ladder and you went on the roof.
Yeah, we did a lot. It was over 3 days, I think, that we were there. We sold a golf cart. We took the keys off the thing and, drove away in it and nobody stopped us really. We didn't hotwire it or anything like that. Yeah. But we did a lot of stuff. We got into a lot of places and that was at a hospital and it's disturbingly easy sometimes.
That's a great point. You didn't have to hotwire it, right? Somehow you were able to acquire the keys and you were able to open it, right? I don't need to hack something if someone just leaves their terminal unlocked and I can just walk up to it.
Yeah. The reason we got into that area that had the keys for the golf carts was because we just followed somebody in that was, walking. We just piggybacked on somebody that was walking in and, we did that several times. And, it's one of those social engineering things where people want to be helpful and they're like, "Oh, let me get the door for you." And I do it myself. I did it in the elevator last night and I was so relieved when this woman was staring at me to, hit her button and she said, "Oh wait, I have to swipe to get to that floor because it was an open building. So anybody can get in the elevator, but you could only go to the lobby on the 6th floor." But I was like, okay, good. I'm not responsible for you.
So, in your opinion, which task takes more planning to complete? A gourmet meal for 20 people or a physical penetration test?
A physical penetration test for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a little unfair for me too, because I cooked for so long and so much that it's so second nature to me. And pen testing, and especially physical pen testing, is so unpredictable. You have that human element where you don't know if you ask somebody a question, how they're going to respond or how you're going to respond. Sometimes, it's just kind of, flying by the seat of your pants sometimes and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah.
Whereas cooking is definitely more structured. Even 20 people I can do with my eyes closed,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What about 200?
I might need some help with that.
Oh my goodness. We have a debate in our house about the difference between cooking for a large group of people and cooking for a small group of people.
Yeah.
And we have some who are good at cooking meals for one or two, but then if you have like guests over, it's a much different thing, right? It's hard to do the good meal unless you're a trained real chef, right? But even if you're good at making a small meal like eggs for one or eggs for two is very different than eggs for 200.
Yeah.
It's about keeping it warm and figuring it out from like a math standpoint.
Yeah, eggs are really hard in that way. They have to be done to order. That's a good
Something,
a good example, because that's something you definitely can't scale.
Yeah.
All right, so if you are now at a catered event or like hanging out, it's someone, you're not making it, you're the guest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone asks you to, what's one of your great physical penetration stories? Do you have like a go-to that you tell people about?
I mean, the one that I mentioned about the hospital, some things happened there towards the end that were pretty exciting. And that one, they had gotten this new like eye in the sky type surveillance system, and they wanted to test it. Okay. So they told us that, at the end of the engagement, they said, they took pictures of us that morning, and they said later on, we're going to put out an APB or whatever they call it, nice. And we're going to say that you are suspicious persons and, see how long it takes them to find you. Well, when they put that out, we were on the golf cart driving around, and it was raining. It was pouring rain. And we were like, this isn't fair. Like, nobody can see us. Like, I don't know how well these cameras can work through the rain. Okay. So we decided to get off and, walk through some of the hallways, and nothing happened. And then we went into another building. And as soon as we walked in, there were two security guards, and they said, whoa, 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 whoa. They were like, stop, like they were a little bit panicked. Okay. And we were like, what's the matter? And they were like, you stay right there. And like getting a little bit aggressive. Okay. So I started to back up, like to walk towards the door. And she said, you got to stay right there. I said, I'm just going to the bathroom. And I was going to turn around and leave. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. So as I started to walk towards the door, an armed police officer walked in, and out of breath. Oh. And mad after running in the rain because they called her to come over. And we finally said, we got to get out of jail free card. That's, we're testing everybody. We all had a good laugh, They never did ask to see the get out of jail free card, which unfortunately we had to put in the report because, but the police officer was none too happy. She said, I said, I was thinking about like taking off. And she said, don't ever do that. She said, that's when the hip comes out. And she had her gun, and she was mad she had to run in the rain, and she was mad she had to run. And, so that one could have ended more negatively, I guess.
Yeah, that's scary.
Oh my gosh.
They forgot to tell the police officers that were on duty on the campus that we were testing. Wow. So there was a disconnect there. So the police officer didn't know that's what was happening.
Oh my gosh.
That's a tough way to learn. Yeah. Whose responsibility is that on a site? Does your team do that, or is the on-site team, or does it depend on each engagement?
I mean, we have a call with them to set the rules of engagement, and that's something that I don't recall off the top of my head if that was, I'm sure it's in there that, they have to notify the appropriate parties, or however it's worded. But that they should have told them, like, because we don't always know like who needs to know or who has to know or who shouldn't know, that is on them.
So I've heard that your culinary career once took you to a major fundraiser at the historic Florida Theater, where unfortunately Florida happened and nearly turned the whole event into a disaster. Yeah. Can you share that with us?
Yes. If you're familiar with the Florida Theater in Jacksonville, I think it's already had its 100-year anniversary. So many years ago, they have an annual fundraiser every year, and it's a big deal, and a lot of restaurants and caterers bid on it, and I really wanted it. They were like the restaurant that that I was running inside the Museum of Contemporary Art was right down the street. So we had a great location to, I could make the food better because I didn't have to because there's no kitchen, So we were, we had to do a lot of the prep work ahead of time.
You bring it with you. Okay.
Bring it with. So we were close by. We had the hot box and all that stuff, but there's still stuff that I wanted to do on site. So we had a table, satellite kitchen set up in the alley. This is very glamorous.
Depends how that's been alley.
Yeah. It's an
alley.
It's an alley next to a 100-year-old building. Yeah. But they had planned on having it outside because the Florida Theater is, it's a big theater, but most of the seating is, in front of the stage. You can't put people there to eat dinner. So they had tents set up outside. They had the whole street blocked off, and Florida happened. And there was I think it was a tropical storm at the time, and they were just hoping it would move away, and it didn't.
Oh.
So, I think we were supposed to start serving hors d'oeuvres at 6:00, and at 4:30 they tore everything down. And we had to pivot, and they had to pivot. So they were so concerned about, right? Let me back up and say that part of the reason that our kitchen was in the alleyway was because there is a no open flame rule inside this old wooden theater.
Okay, fair enough.
For obvious reasons.
Fair enough.
But in the chaos of it, you're not thinking about that. You're just like, okay, well, I can't be outside here. Now I have to be inside here. They put us in the lobby, which was supposed to be for cocktails, and then they had to move. And then they had to bring in all these tables and set them up in the walkways and other various areas for, I think, 200 people at the time.
Oh my gosh.
So the servers were squeezing in between and trying to. Anyway, so hors d'oeuvres were fine. We're getting ready. We're waiting to put out dinner, and we had burners. They're propane burners, and if you've ever seen when you kind of shove this can in there and you lock it in, and then you click it to light it, and it sparks and it lights.
Okay.
At least that's what's supposed to happen. So a few days before, I was talking to the owner of the company that was doing all the decor. I was at her office, and her friend came in and was talking about how he, wanted to be a chef, and he had done barbecue and all this stuff, but he was really interested. And she said, "Oh, Kathy's doing this thing at the Florida Theater and blah blah." And he was like, "Do you need any help?" And because you bid on these things and you want it to be, the best it can be, and you want to get you kind of go low. And all I'm thinking was I could absolutely use another pair of hands. He was like, "You don't have to pay me. I won't do it." And I was like, "Sure, just show up at this time."
You had me at free.
Yeah.
You had me at free.
Which, looking back was probably not the best idea. But his
nickname was Sparky or something like that.
I don't even remember. I think I blocked out his name.
Yeah, fair.
But he didn't know what he was doing. He went to light it, and he hadn't locked the cannon all the way. So when he sparked it, the propane came out and shot a flame into the air, probably 8 feet.
Oh my God.
Off the top of the table. And it was like that scene have you ever seen the movie Backdraft?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know the scene where he's talking about the fire and he squirts the lighter fluid, and he's talking about how it's a living thing and it just kind of swirls up, and you watch that? That's what it looked like to me. I was like watching my career go up in flames, basically.
Oh, no.
So, and I'm in charge in this situation, so I'm trying not to panic. So I just grab a pan of water, and I'm like, and I throw it on, and nothing happens. And it scoots down the table. Now everything's wet. Somebody else is trying to shake it, and the fire's still coming out. And finally, when one of my line cooks batted it like a cat, and it flew. They had the doors open because it was hot in there, so it flew out into the street and disconnected itself on the curb.
Oh my God!
So it just happened to be that the door was open, and that was what saved the.
Yeah. And I know that sounds like a very short amount of time, and it probably was, but it was one of those slow motion things that lasted forever.
Yeah.
And then, we had to serve dinner. So then it was just kind of like, okay, so now put this chicken on the plate. That guy was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, don't talk to me.
I don't even want to see you right now.
Process it until later on. I was like, oh my God, I could have burned down the Florida Theater. We shouldn't have been inside with but everything was so hectic. Just that chaos that ensued after that storm was coming.
Yeah.
It's unreal. Sorry.
Yeah.
That sounds like one of the most high pressure situations you can be in. Did that at all prepare you for physical penetration testing?
Yeah, I think so. Just high pressure situations like that, where you want everything to go perfectly and you want, your client to be happy, it's kind of the same thing, it's a different kind of pressure. There's a lot of pressure you put on yourself with this job.
Yeah.
I mean, with cooking too, but because what we're doing when we're pen testing is, removed from the client for the most part until it's over, unless we have questions, and then we do the read out of the report and all that. A lot of the pressure and panic they don't see.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where when you're cooking, especially because I was in an open kitchen for many, many years, when things happened, the whole dining room saw. So you had to keep a game face on pretty.
It makes you wonder if like people's desire to cook even in the home, is inversely proportional to the idea of the open kitchen in the house. Like I kind of wish like I had a kitchen that had a door.
Yeah.
Where I could go in there and cook. And
Nobody's.
yeah, you're like, why are y'all watching me doing this, right? Like,
especially if you have a kitchen because our kitchen has it's not an island, it's a peninsula, whatever, and, but it's open to the dining room and everything. So everybody wants to stand in that square in the kitchen. And they're like, you can stand on the other side of this right here and see exactly what I'm doing. And I won't back up into you with a knife in my hand. Probably.
So one of the things we saw this morning in your talk was that you are a horror fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big horror fan too. And we talk about from time to time movies that we like and things like this. But one question we want to ask, right, is like, there doesn't seem to have been a big budget cybersecurity horror film. Like there have been cyber films, we kind of joke around about them. And obviously there's a lot of horror films, but there hasn't been a big budget cybersecurity horror film. Why do you think that hasn't been? Like, do you have any ideas for one? Like, what could we do if we wanted to do some kind of a big budget?
No,
it's on everyone's mind. People should.
Yeah. It's like they're doing, I watched a movie over the weekend called Companion. It was, it's an AI it was really good.
I've heard it was.
Yeah, it was a fun movie. It was a fun horror movie to watch. It was more psychological thriller. But I don't know, there was Fear.com that came out in the 2000s. That was probably the biggest one I can think of. But I don't know why there hasn't. Like they're seen, especially with like, when you start talking about dark web stuff, I feel like there's so many opportunities there. Maybe we should pitch something.
There was The Beekeeper, which was a Jason Statham action movie that may have only been it was on Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever. And it was like an action movie. And the premise was the beekeeper is like a retired government operative. No spoilers here. But he forms a relationship with someone who's an older person, played by a very famous actress, I think Felicia Rashad, from The Cosby Show. And she becomes the victim of an online scam.
Oh.
But then he, comes out of his, retirement to go and extract vengeance.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie, but it's not a horror movie. It's sort of more told like an action tale. But that premise could have been, like a person's life starts falling apart because of some social engineering that kind of grabbed up in it.
Oh yeah. And that's what most of them seem to be like. With the cyber movies, the ones that we have had, they seem to run more along those lines.
Yeah. I've got to check fear.com out again. I remember when it came out years ago.
And The Beekeeper, I have that in my queue. I haven't watched it yet. Now I'm going to have to watch it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
It's going with the correct skeptical mindset. But I thought it was pretty good. As a Jason Statham movie goes, it is a Jason Statham. Okay, it's that. If you've seen one of those, you've seen more of them.
So, speaking about scary stuff, you mentioned the dark web, and we mentioned how amazing your talk was earlier about it. How do you use the dark web as a tool in your work as a pen tester?
I don't have to go on the dark web to get the information that I need. We have a tool that we use called Flare. There's a lot of these dark web monitoring tools out there. That's just the one that we like and we use. But what it does is we can put in a name or a domain name, our clients, whatever it is, and it'll scrape everything, aggregate all the data, and find any mentions of that name on the dark web in real time. So you can see it come up. So if I'm on a test and I have found an admin login page and I want to try credentials on there, that's a good way to try and do it. We can find, and sometimes, they're old or, they've been changed, or sometimes they're not even, people use their they're work emails for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You know, you're signing up for Kohl's.com or whatever, and you're using your work email. So it hopefully is different. But if you're reusing your passwords and you're using the same password for Kohl's as you are for your work email and not rotating it or anything, then, you know, we all know that that can go south real quick.
Yep.
So that's been a lot of what I've used it for credentials, for the most part. That, and we do have some other things that we offer clients that are not part of the pen test, for the dark web monitoring. But as far as pen testing goes, we look a lot for credentials. It's just a fast, easy way to kind of check some things off.
Gotcha. So you are also a part of the BSides community in Jacksonville, which I love. I love all the BSides.
Yeah, they're great.
What excites you the most about helping out and helping run it? And how can newcomers make the most of events like BSides?
They should attend them. First of all,
absolutely.
yes. And they're, I mean, BSides, you know, are relatively cheap or free depending on, you know, who the sponsors are and where they are.
Yeah.
Ours is really low cost. And if you're a student, you know, we have student codes, because it's held at the University of North Florida every year. And it's great to see the students or people just getting into the careers and how excited they are about everything and, you know, what they're learning, because it wasn't that long ago that was me, you know. I mean, I've only been, you know, between school and work now, it's been not quite 5 years since I've transitioned into this field.
Yeah.
So I still have a lot of that excitement and, you know, learning to do. And so I would go to, you know, as many talks as you can. You know, those are always great, you know, and try to vary it, you know.
Yeah.
Something on, you know, maybe compliance or whatever maybe doesn't sound that exciting, but, you know, you'd be surprised like how fun and interesting everyone makes their talks.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice for sure.
All right, so we're going to take a short break now here in the Threat Locker Cybersecurity Podcast studio. And when we return, we'll go through the lifestyle polygraph. Stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
All right, welcome back. As many of you know, the lifestyle polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of our nation's most important secrets. Here, though, we use it for only slightly lower stakes, to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Kathy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. Which horror movie villain would make the ultimate on-site pen test partner, and what role would you assign them?
Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Dang.
Good choice.
I mean, for an on-site for a physical pen test, like the social engineering alone,
Yes.
like, you know, he can pose as a professor, a doctor. Like, I don't think it matter where we'd be, as long as I can get him off of the, you know, refocus him from the eating people thing,
Right.
you know. And me, like, I don't know. I feel like we would be buds, so he probably wouldn't eat me, but you know. I think he'd be number one. Yeah.
That's a really good
And I couldn't make him wear that mask because then that would kind of throw people off too. Yeah.
You know.
You'd have to keep a tight cordon around the situation. He would probably try to escape as soon as he could.
Oh, I remember the movie where he picked the handcuffs behind his back in that cage. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's a dangerous game, but I mean, some hackers are kind of a dangerous game too.
A little sketch.
Are you usually in a team? Is it usually a two-person situation so you could watch each other and play off each other?
Cool. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Number 2, if you could have any horror movie soundtrack playing while you stealthily breach a building during a high-stakes pen test, which one would set the perfect mood?
I mean, I think Jaws, probably. Which is one of my favorite movies. I hear that soundtrack in my head sometimes when I'm just doing something. If I know it's gonna like amp up, I'm like just start dun dun. Yeah. Dun 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 dun. So it would have to be that, and then I would get more panicky and move faster as it, you know, as the music got faster.
It's one of the few soundtracks that you can just hear the first 2 bars.
Always.
Right.
Yeah.
It's enough. People know exactly what it is. They just absolutely nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one of those movies where, you know, you're talking like a teenager and she's like, how could this be scary? It's about a shark in
Right.
the water. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here
Yeah.
we go. Boom.
Let's
You
find
know?
out.
Let's play this. So, you know,
We watch it every summer, you know, at least the first one, if not all of them. It's one of my favorites. But
it's good to watch at the end of the summer when you're
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're ready, when you're sad about like kind of leaving the summer behind.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I didn't want to go in the ocean anyway.
my daughter's in surf camp. And,
Oh my gosh.
So,
Oh my gosh.
but she's not. She's totally cool about it. She has no fear of it. She did
good.
get pounded by a wave in Grand Cayman many years ago, and after she got past that, I
Yeah.
think she's just like, I'm fine.
But on the Atlantic coast of Florida, like when they start swarming, you know, the local television stations put helicopters up, and now it's drones.
Oh.
So if you're out there and you look and you see where the drones are, and you're not where the drones are, you're good because that means the trucks are
Oh,
over there.
Interesting.
You're actually sort of okay.
Yeah, when you
That's-
see them out there and how close they are to the shore and to people, even though they're pretty far away, like too close for comfort.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we had one off the shore of St. Augustine, a great white recently. I saw in the news within the last couple of weeks, I believe. One that they're tracking.
if it's here to eat the other sharks, then it goes. Maybe it's okay, but I don't
Well,
know.
what if they eat them and now they're still hungry?
It's just an appetizer.
Exactly.
That's no good.
All right. Question 3. We heard you recently helped your teenage daughter renovate her bedroom, and part of that included displaying some of her prized vinyl records. What was that experience like for you, and how has music become something you both bond over?
Oh, it was great because I had her a lot later. And so being an older parent, and then being able to introduce her to the music that I grew up with, the, 70s, 80s music and the horror movies. And when she was a little bit older, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time I showed her the video for Thriller, which to me, I was just like, this is horror and music,
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I probably showed it to her too young. She was a little freaked out, but now she loves it. We redid her room and I put 4 shelves on the wall where she displayed some of her albums, and she's got Thriller up there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So she
That's
does
awesome.
swap them out like a little bit, but but it was great because she gets she's got such a wide taste in music. Probably once or twice a year, she'll come home and tell me some story about at school, one of the teachers saying something that they don't expect any of the kids to get. And she's like, you talking about Oasis?
Yeah.
And they're like, how did you know that?
My partner and I have a joke about Oasis because I've recently gotten my hair cut, and the other day they were like, you look an awful lot like Liam Gallagher.
Oh, come on.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And they showed me a picture and was like, boom, roasted.
One of classically a good-looking person. All right, that's
Could be
the,
a lot worse.
fair enough.
Could be a lot
Very, very popular. It's true. If the intent behind it is what's.
Yes, exactly.
We have at Christmas, my 2 daughters both received record players to play vinyl, but they didn't receive very many records because I think it wasn't clear how expensive they are now.
Oh, yeah.
So we have 2 Taylor Swift albums and OK Computer by Radiohead currently
okay.
playing, which is great, but there's only so much of those 3 you can take. And you're like, it is kind of nice that we do have Spotify, the availability of other music, because it's been, I know the words to 25 Taylor Swift songs.
Oh my God.
And I already knew the words to OK Computer.
Yeah.
So now but anyway, I hope I get a trivia question on that one day and I'll be.
So you'll know.
You'll be set.
I can answer. Yeah.
We did the same thing. She got a record player for Christmas, and I got her 2 albums. And then we went to a record store nearby that had old,
That's what we
some
need to
cheap
do.
ones.
Yeah.
But my wife was like, I think I have my old records in the garage. And I was like, get out of here, really?
Yeah.
So she went out there and dug them out. And sure enough, she had 3 Thriller albums for some reason. But yeah,
In some ways,
her dad was a
that's not
DJ.
enough.
So I think he got promo stuff to
That's
do. So
really
she had a lot of 45s and
That is so
all
cool.
this cool stuff. So, she's got a stack of them now, and it didn't cost me very much then.
That's awesome.
See, that's very,
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah. All right. Number 4, what was your absolute favorite childhood toy? And do you see any hacker tendencies in the way that you played with it?
Oh boy. I had a lot of favorites that I wish I had now. They're worth so much money now, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I did have an easy bake oven.
Oh, okay.
And I remember my mom giving it to me and me being so excited about it and reading the directions,
Yeah.
but not realizing 'cause I don't know, I must have been like 7 or 8, but you know, this is the 80s. They just like handed you, parents were like, go for it, you know, make a cake, kid.
There's some charcoal.
Right.
You figure it out. Yeah. Be the
There was a light bulb inside of it. I don't know. I'm sure they're not like that now, but at the time there was the 100-watt light bulb inside of it, and it's cooking stuff. So, and I hadn't cooked anything at that point. So when it came out, I grabbed it with my hand, and it was this hot little metal pan, and I was so shocked that I took it apart because I was like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
I was so confused. I hadn't cooked anything. They like literally were just like, here you go. So I kept playing with it after that, but like it is interesting that I hadn't realized a light bulb could cook anything. Like there was so many lessons in that, but like.
That tells you about what those old school incandescent light bulbs, the heat they were giving out.
Yeah.
People were using them in the North. If you had chicken coops, it was enough to have a light bulb like that to keep water from freezing.
Yeah.
So you could keep the chickens with their water during the winter. It's crazy.
Yeah. You just give them to a kid. No problem.
My mom with her cigarette. Here you go.
Have fun. Yes. All right. Final question. If you had the chance to beat Bobby Flay and finally knock that smug look off his face, how would you use your hacker mindset to craft that winning dish?
I don't even think I would want to do any kind of hacking anything.
Okay.
I would just make a dish that I know how to make over and over again and just mop the floor with him.
Yes. He needs it. He needs it.
I was well known for a shrimp and grit dish that I did in the restaurant. And I'm from Chicago. I didn't grow up eating shrimp and grits and all, so I didn't have a lot of preconceived notions about it. So when I started messing around with this recipe, I just kind of made it my own, and it turned out great. So that was one of the dishes that, you know, sold the most at the restaurant that I was well known for. So I think I would make that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see that happen.
Is it something about chefs? Like, there's so many television shows about cooking, which is like this beautiful artistic thing that you feed your friends and family with. But then they set it up so it's a competition.
You're right. Yeah.
Like, is there chefs just like that? Or is that a TV thing?
I think that's a TV thing.
Okay.
You know, because like when was it Gordon Ramsay, Hell's Kitchen first came out, I couldn't stand him. I was just like, why are you so mean? You know, because I've worked with chefs before that have yelled and thrown stuff and all that, and it's no fun for anybody. You know, I mean, it might be fun for them. I don't know,
Right.
but over the years, I've learned more about him, and I think it's all just for show.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's really like that. You know, I think it's for show, but it made me angry in the beginning because. You know, it's one thing to have like a competition where there's some big prize at the end, and you know it's really based on how good the food is. But you know, they always got it with those reality TV shows. They got to throw those little things in there and pump them up with alcohol and you know,
sleep deprived.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why did we
Like,
just get
really
these 20
super
minutes?
hot.
Give him 2 hours.
Right.
Give him the amount of time it takes to make it good.
It's like normal amount of time.
Because they're hoping to make good TV. They're hoping somebody's gonna lose their shit and like, you know.
Yeah. All right, Jack. What do you think?
All right. So, Kathy, you do have what it takes
Yeah.
to make our fantasy cybersecurity squad. You had us, frankly, a backdraft.
Yeah.
You had us a backdraft.
Yeah. And it was a nice capstone to just think about what it would be like to taste that delicious shrimp and grits dish.
And
So-
see Bobby Flay with a frown on his face. Yeah.
So, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us. If our listeners want to learn, more about you or more about Secure Ideas, how can they connect with you guys?
SecureIdeas.com is our website, and we've got a lot of information and resources there. We've got a blog, knowledge article, all of our services, and pricing too, which is something that you don't see a lot, but we're very transparent about that.
Yeah.
So, I would definitely encourage people to check it all out. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. That wraps up today's show. I want to thank everybody who's here in the live audience too. We have Kurt Sanger here from Buchanan Ingersoll, kind of a well-known cybersecurity celebrity. And we did a little bit of a teaser for about a couple episodes down the road. We may be seeing a little bit more of him. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference. And if you're listening and you attended the conference, I hope I got a chance to visit with you over the 2 days here in what should be sunny Tampa, Florida, starting tomorrow. And thank you again to our sponsor, ThreatWalker, here for the podcast studio. We really appreciate your support.
Thanks for listening to the No Password Required podcast. Join us next time for more with your favorite cybersecurity personalities. In the meantime, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. You can find us on social media at NoPasswordPod. The show is produced by Cyber Florida, and a special thanks goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields and Reality Shift. For more information, visit our website at cyberflorida.org/pod.